Now, here's your host, Dylan Bloyd.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Business Leaders of America podcast. Today, I'm joined by Steven Pivnik, entrepreneur, author, speaker, and advisor. Steven is the founder of Binary Tree, a software company he built over 26 years into a global business with more than 200 employees across 12 countries before successfully exiting. Along the way, he led the company through major enterprise partnerships, multiple acquisitions, and significant growth with organizations including IBM, Microsoft, and Google. Today, he works with founders to help them grow, increase valuation, and prepare for successful exits. He has advised on more than 1 billion in founder exits and now focuses on helping entrepreneurs turn long-term effort into meaningful outcomes. He is also the author of Built to Finish and host of Built to Finish podcast. In this conversation, we'll talk about his entrepreneurial journey, the lessons learned from building and exiting Binary Tree, and what it really takes to create a company that can successfully transition at scale. Steven, welcome to the show.
Dylan, thank you. Thank you for that great introduction, and thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. It's all you. You made it easy on me. Steven, so you built, scaled, and exited the company, as we mentioned, but what initially pulled you into entrepreneurship in the first place?
Yeah, I think it was the immigrant lifestyle that we were leading. My parents left the former Soviet Union in 1972 and, brought me over to this wonderful country at the age of 3. And they just pursued the American dream, if you will, right? So I witnessed my father go through the entrepreneurial journey. I witnessed the work ethic that he and my grandfather had. And when I started my professional career, after only a couple of years, I felt that I would be, better served if I, started my own company, and I
Right.
would make a better difference in the marketplace that I was in.
Yes, absolutely. No, I love that. I've actually had the opportunity to speak with other founders who have immigrated to the United States and, have been very successful, and sometimes it seems like their parents do the same thing, right? They end up, coming over, being successful, and it's more so because of the fact that they don't have any other choice, right? They need to make sure that they're successful, and it feels like there's a little bit different drive.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of parents are like insistent that their kids, go through a, certain path in life.
Hmm.
But in other instances, it's just watching, right? It's kind of like, monkey see, monkey do.
Right.
Actions from parents are very impressionable
Yes.
on their offspring. And I think that was the case with me. It's not like they were saying, hey, you have to go do this, you have to go into business for yourself. I just watched them do it. And I said,
Yes.
you know what? I think this is the right path for me.
Right, right, right. Yeah, well, you definitely chose the right path, Steven. So before Binary Tree became a global company, you had a couple of startup failures, right? So what did those early experiences teach you that helped shape the entrepreneur you became?
Yeah, it was interesting. Build it and they will come is not the best strategy in the
Yeah.
world, right? Just because you're going to put up a shingle, that doesn't mean folks are gonna. It's almost like a fool's errand. I mean,
Right,
obviously it worked for Facebook. They didn't do much. It was beyond innovative, and it was like super super different and very new, um, and it worked.
right.
So yeah, I think the mistakes that I made were around not having a clear strategy on what it is I really wanted to do and how it would be differentiated from others. I had developed a skill set of writing code, creating technical solutions. And again, that little shingle, me and my partner, we just created. I actually have it here. We just created an ad in the New York Times that we are a consulting company. We will charge you less than others, and please hire us. It
Wow.
worked to a certain extent, but
Right,
that's not really scalable. So
right,
lack of a marketing plan, lack of a true focus on what you want to do, and just lack of prior experience also contributed to the failure.
right, right. Yeah, no, I mean, you learn from your failures, but at the same time, I feel like that makes you more successful in the long run, right? Sometimes people do hit the home run first try, but that's not always the case, right? And so you tend to take a lot of those lessons from your failures and implement them into what you could do differently in your new venture, right? And I think it obviously, paid dividends for you.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have a chapter in my book, Built to Finish, about failure and how, failure shouldn't define you. You should actually, celebrate failure because of all the lessons that are available there. I mean, it's just a master class in what not to do, which is often as important as what to do, right? Because it's so easy to um to just be down on yourself and to hem and haw like, oh my God, this didn't work, that didn't work. Uh, but at the end of the day, just learn from those things and move forward and don't repeat them.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, because if you don't learn from them, you're going to repeat them, right? It's just going to keep making the same mistake over and over again, and not understanding why you are. So, stop, take a second, really review back why it didn't work out, or even not even necessarily a failure, but sometimes if it didn't work out the way you had planned it to, right? And how
Exactly.
it could be more, it could be a little bit better the next time. So, you're
Right.
absolutely right.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, you spent more than 26 years building Binary Tree, scaled it to 200 plus employees across 12 countries and worked with, big giants, IBM, Microsoft, Google, and others. Looking back, what were some of the key decisions that had the biggest impact on your company's growth?
Yeah. I think like you just mentioned, those big boys,
Yeah.
I think it's a really good strategy worth considering for a lot of people. Instead of being, isolated, tying yourself to the success of a bigger player is a great strategy to undertake. Right. So in the 90s, it was IBM. They were the kings of email. And my business was all around email technology. In the 90s, it was IBM. They were really ruling because of their acquisition of Lotus, which most people think of Lotus as 123, the spreadsheet, but Lotus
Yes.
actually had a phenomenal enterprise grade email system. So, we tied our horses to the IBM Lotus wagon, and that drove our growth in the 90s. And then we had a little bit of a stint with Google because, Google tried to make a play in the enterprise email space, so we were kind of attached to them for a while. And then what really created the hockey stick for us was attaching ourselves to Microsoft because, Microsoft, you know, finally figured out how to make their email solution less virus prone, more secure, more scalable, and more applicable to enterprise customers. And we latched our wagon, to that horse. And
Mm,
oh my God, did that pay off?
right.
So latch, being innovative and going at it in a very, very unique way is great if you can figure that out. But latching yourself onto a huge industry player is a great strategy too.
Right, right. How did you go about doing that? Reaching out to a big company like that and, starting to partner with them and latch on because I know there's opportunities to kind of, you can go to the websites and figure out ways to work with them, or fill out applications, things like that. But at the same time, it's not always easy, right? So how exactly did you guys go about that initially?
Yeah, so there's a lot of big companies, actually most big companies, they have partner programs, right? And they have reseller programs. Those are really important to look into. And but everybody is signing up for these programs. So you need
Hmm.
to find a way to differentiate yourself from everybody else that's signing up for the same programs.
Yes.
And I think the folks that get further than others are the ones that are actually benefiting the big player that they're attaching this themselves to. Like, for instance, our technology helped IBM gain market share when we were partnered with them. Our technology helped Microsoft, gain market share and more revenue when we partnered with them. Those are the players that, really um, I'm sorry. Those are the moves that really differentiate yourself because when they can see that a partner, a reseller, a distributor is actually adding value and helping them move the needle, that's going to make a, big difference and differentiate you from everybody else that just wants to be another Microsoft partner or another Google partner.
Right, right, exactly. So yeah, differentiate yourself and bring something to the table that creates value for them, right? So
Exactly.
definitely, yeah, absolutely. So after decades of building the business, you successfully exited, right? So what was that experience like emotionally, and how did you know it was the right time to exit?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I get asked that a lot,
Yeah.
I don't have a specific answer other than it was time.
Mm,
Right? I've been at it for so long. We had an amazing journey, a lot of wins, made a huge difference in the market that we were in, and I just felt that it was time, and I decided to surround myself with folks that were super familiar with the exit process, that knew how to maximize that for myself and everybody else that was involved, and trusted their advice, and executed on a multi-year plan to get me to that finish line. It was
Right.
for me, it was just time. Something just clicked and it was
Yes.
time.
Right, right. So did you stay on with them at all after with your company, or was it a clean exit and you were out?
Yeah, so their exits come in so many different shapes and sizes.
Right.
Mine specifically, and it was engineered this way, and I love sharing this because this is possible for many others that want to do this. My exit was engineered so that on the day that it closed, I had nothing to do with the organization that acquired my company. They literally, transaction closed. I checked my bank accounts. Muscle memory, right? You go check your
Yes.
email every 30 seconds. You go check your
Right.
calendar, like what's my next meeting, et cetera, et cetera. Like muscle memory, no access to email, no access to my calendar, phone stopped ringing, instant messages stop coming in. It was just like, in an eerie silence. And so that's very possible. If somebody wants to architect an exit where there's zero involvement going forward, it's very possible. I'm living proof.
Mhm. Yeah, that had to been very strange initially after 26 years of doing it, and then just completely cut off. But at the same time, I'm sure it was bittersweet.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. It was a little bit of sweet. It was a little bit of, eerie silence for the first 24 hours, but then I'm like, "Hey, this is what you asked for, so
Right. Yes, exactly.
go forward."
Yeah, I think that's all the time, founders when they give up their first baby, right? It's like, man, am I making the right decision? But of course, you've definitely made the right decision because today you're helping maximize the value of the, founders maximize the value of their companies, prepare for successful exits as well. So, what are some of the biggest mistakes founders make when they start thinking about selling their business?
My god, there's so many. Um,
Yeah.
I guess the top ones are how much their company's dependent on them. Founder dependency is a huge valuation killer because it represents risk, to the buyer. If you're still involved in the majority of the sales calls, if you own the majority of your top customer relationships, vendor relationships, employee relationships, you basically are representing risk to the buyer. So, that's a big mistake.
Yes.
Not focusing enough on recurring revenue is another big mistake because, buyers they want a little bit of insurance, right? They want a
Right.
little bit of a, guarantee that there's a lot of contractual recurring revenue, which, I hurt myself a ton. We were doing over $40 million a year and only 10% was recurring.
Got it.
So we had a huge amount of sales, but a small percentage of recurring, which hurt us.
Yes.
Another one is not being able to clearly articulate your differentiation and how hard it would be for, somebody else to recreate it,
Mm,
right? So we call it a moat. Like, if your differentiation moat isn't long or deep enough, that's going to hurt you. That's just, some of the, top ones that come to
right.
mind.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And so when you're looking for founders that you're assisting with, do you typically look for people who kind of went the same route as you did, from 5 to 10 years with the business, kind of bootstrapping and then looking for a successful exit, or is it, venture capital backed? How do you go about looking for clients or clients that you typically work with?
Yeah, what you said first is exactly right. I'm looking. We are. I read this in a book by Rory Vaden. I think it's called "Take the Stairs." We are best positioned to serve a younger version of ourselves.
Yes.
So I'm literally looking for a younger version of myself. Somebody that's bootstrapped their organization, has been in the business for 10 plus years, and has 90 or more percent of their personal net worth tied into their business.
Mm,
So that was me.
yes.
15 years ago, and that's the ideal customer that I can relate to personally.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. You relate to personally, and that's exactly what you would want in someone who's done it, right? Because if you're having someone assist you and they have never done it themselves, then it's not that they can't do it. There are people out there that can do that, but at the same time, it makes them a whole lot more comfortable when they're being advised by somebody who's been there, done that, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, you've advised again more than 1 billion in founder exits. What would you say separates the companies that achieve premium valuations that versus those that don't?
Um, First of all, the founders need to be coachable, right? And it took me a while, right? It took me a really long time in my 26-year journey to finally realize that I don't know everything. And so, they need to also subscribe to, they've done a great job growing their business, but they need to be, coachable and be able to take advice, from others.
Yeah.
They need to execute on the recommendations that are given, because these recommendations that myself and my partners are giving, it's not just for the sake of recommendations. It's because we know it'll move the needle. And the hardest one that people have a hard time accepting is dealing with their leadership team. Because a lot of founders are very loyal, like I was,
Yeah.
and they have people that have been with them from the get-go in very senior positions. And this
Yes.
isn't a knock on those folks. Those folks were fantastic and they were needed to get the company to where it is, but they're not the same folks that are necessary to get the company to the next level.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
taking action on those folks is super, super heartbreaking, but unfortunately, very necessary for the company's continued growth and in its positioning to be sold. So if they're not willing to do that, then sorry, it's not a
Right,
good fit.
right. Yeah, exactly. No, you're absolutely right. I think that, of course, loyalty plays a part, but at the same time, if you want to, you got to, when you're looking to exit, there's got to be a plan in place for everybody. And I think even on your website, you had the first 11 people or 10 people that worked with you from start to finish or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there were several. I mean, I'm super,
Yeah.
super fortunate that, I mean, I was incredibly loyal and my loyalty was returned.
Yes.
And I've had, a lot of people that, moved around in, various areas of the organization, just because that's when, one of the, many things that a founder needs to do is to put the right, what's the saying? I'm not sure. Put the right people in the right seats, right?
Right,
You have to
right.
identify the right seats, and then you have to make sure that you have the right people in those seats.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess if you were to sit down with a founder who wanted to sell their company, 3 years from now, what would be like the first thing you'd tell them to focus on?
So the first one would be the leadership team, right?
Mm,
So first and foremost, we need to make sure that there's the proper corporate governance in place in terms of, processes and procedures to make sure that we can close the books very, very methodically in an organized fashion to produce very, very consistent and reliable information about the finances.
yes.
Closing the books in less than a week is like that's table stakes. That's the must. If
Hmm.
anybody has a, head of finance that says, no, that's impossible, it's going to take at least 10 days to 2 weeks every single month to close the books, he or she is not experienced enough. You've got to be able to close the books faster, because when you go through a process, and it doesn't need to be a sale, it could be getting a new credit line, it can be getting in, a new investor, it could be getting a new business partner. These processes take months. And if you can't produce, accurate and reliable information 7 days after a month closes, their perception of you is going to deteriorate. So first and foremost, it's, getting your corporate governance and finance and accounting functions in place.
Yeah.
Second of all, it's going to be, making sure that we can either continue or reinvigorate the growth trajectory, because you never want to go to market when you're flat or declining, right? So, and every founder has a myriad of reasons why, growth has stalled. It's
Yes.
never the fault of the head of sales. Well, 90% of the time, it is the fault of the head of sales.
Yes. Yeah.
We had a company that we sold recently, and the head of sales was the individual's best friend. And
Man.
he took a lot of our advice about various, leadership team members, but the head of sales was, a sacred cow, untouchable.
Right.
Bad. Like, if you can fix just those two things, that already, moves the valuation in a significant positive direction.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, being that you've been a part of a lot of these exits, what would ideally be the amount of time that you should, people should start reaching out to you before they start, the process of exiting?
Yeah, I would say, 2 years minimum.
Yeah.
Sometimes 4. These
Okay.
projects take a while. Like, for instance, like if we uncover not enough competitive differentiation, that doesn't happen overnight. Figuring out that the leadership team really isn't at the caliber that it needs to be. You don't just, hire, 4 new lead executives overnight and get them assimilated into the organization. Competitive differentiators, like I mentioned, and there's a whole bunch of, other things. Growth to show, trailing, 24 to 36 months of growth, If
Yeah.
it's already happening, fantastic. If it's
Yeah.
not happening, then we have to show that. And one of the other really important things is showing how much growth there's still left in the market and in what you have to offer. Because no buyer wants to buy a steady state business. They want to buy a business that has potential growth, going forward.
Hmm.
So those are the elements that need to be worked on. And sometimes they take years, not
Yeah.
weeks.
Right. Right. No, absolutely. Well, amazing. Anybody who's listening, please make sure you guys reach out. If that's something you guys are starting to listen, think about, then please make sure you guys are reaching out as soon as possible because, like you said, ideally, 2 to 4 years, that's some time, right? So, if you guys are listening and this fits the mold for you, make sure you guys are reaching out. So, I want to switch gears a little bit real quick. I want to talk about your book, Built to Finish. So, what inspired you to write it, and what do you hope founders take away from it?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So after I sold my business, and a year later, I also completed the Ironman World Championship in Kona, Hawaii. Both of these things were two of my big, I call them, Jim Collins coined the term big, hairy, audacious goals.
Yes.
Those two were my two big, hairy, audacious goals. When I
Gotcha.
completed them, I said, you know what? That's a pretty good story on both fronts, on the endurance front and on the business front. I want to memorialize my journey in a book in the hopes of inspiring others, to set and achieve big goals. My wife hates it when I say this, but if a couch potato and college dropout can build and sell a large company and qualify for and compete in the Ironman World Championship, there's no reason other people can't do it also. So,
Yeah.
it's been really rewarding to get the feedback from people that just, pick up the book randomly and, text and email me and say, "Hey, thank you so much for making this book available. It inspired me to do X." And, it's a good read. It's a quick read. It's like a motivational memoir with a whole bunch of, tips and tricks and lessons learned and advice.
I love that. And you're absolutely right. Anybody can do it, and so, I love inspiring stories like that. And I'm sure a lot of listeners do as well. So please make sure you guys are picking up your copy. Steven, this has been amazing. I really do appreciate you joining today, spending time with me and the listeners. For anyone who is listening, though, who would like to connect with you, learn more about your advisory work, your book, and didn't really get a chance to talk about your podcast, but also Built to Finish podcast, what's the best way for them to do so?
So the best way to contact me is on LinkedIn or on Instagram. My handles for LinkedIn and Instagram are at Steven Pivnik, one word. And a lot of more information, including my weekly blog, my book, and other information is available on my website, which is stevenpivnik.com.
Amazing. Yeah, I'll make sure those are in the show notes, make it a little bit easier on the listeners to make sure they're connecting and reaching out. So again, Stephen, I really do appreciate you joining us today and spending time with me and the listeners.
Hey, Dylan, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed our conversation.